Hello and welcome to Catholic Focus. My name is Kuda Matambo. Thank you, our viewers, for continued support, for sharing and watching our episodes. On this show, we talk about the issues that affect the society, the church, and see how we can use our faith to respond to the issues. Today, we are talking about an issue and crisis that has gripped the world over, Zimbabwe and our immediate communities, the issues to do with alcohol, drug, and substance abuse. And to discuss what practical matters that we can use to respond to this crisis as a church and as communities. Today we have Jacob Shamuyarira from Pamumvuri PVO to discuss this topic. Welcome, Jacob.
Hi, Kuda. Thank you very much for inviting me.
I am very well. How are you doing today?
Not too bad.
Okay. Well, tell us, Jacob, what is Pamumvuri and what do you do?
Okay, so Pamumvuri is a registered non-profit organization, registered as a PVO here in Zimbabwe. And the work that we do is around mental health, environmental conservation, and social entrepreneurship. We have quite a number of programs that we're rolling out in partnership with the government, through the Interministerial Task Force on Drug and Substance Abuse, the Ministry of Health, and the World Health Organization. We also work with private sector as well.
Okay, so tell us about, the world is gripped with this crisis on drug and substance abuse, but I do understand there's also alcoholism involved in this. How much of a crisis are we facing?
Well, we've got quite a huge crisis around the world and in Zimbabwe. Globally, 1 in every 4 adults will develop a mental health condition at some point in their life. This may be the simple common mental health disorders like your failing to sleep at night, grief, anxiety, depression. And then it then goes throughout the scale to some more complex conditions like schizophrenia, etc. But a lot of people do self-medicate with drugs and alcohol, which is why then a lot of substance abuse gets into the picture. It's someone's best attempt to deal with other issues that they're dealing with, that they're going through and don't know how to adequately solve. So a lot of untreated mental health conditions do pop up as substance use disorders, which also falls within that spectrum of mental health conditions.
Okay. When people are talking about drug and substance abuse, the emphasis is often on the use of drugs, and different substances. But I do understand there is also alcoholism that's part of it. Yeah. How different are these addictions, if we can use them?
Okay, so in our work, which we've been doing for a few years now, we have identified alcoholism as one condition. We've got issues with tobacco and e-cigarettes, which is quite rampant among the youth these days. We've got abuse of pharmaceutical drugs, where people are getting prescriptions. Either you get prescription medication from different pharmacies, like your certain drugs that are being used for that. Then there is the narcotics, the illegal substances that people are taking. Then also have other forms of addiction, workaholism, pornography, gambling, so it's quite a lot of issues that are out there. But as you rightly put it, alcoholism is one of the least talked about issues, yet it's one of the biggest.
Mm-hmm. And how do we tell somebody is addicted? A lot of people are talking about this, and I think that's part of your job, to raise awareness, to help people respond to this crisis. How do you tell somebody is addicted, and how do you help them?
Okay, so at a community level, be it at the household or be it at church, and I think it's quite relevant talking about church because, we are our brother's keeper. When you see sudden changes in behavior, either someone who used to be quite active in church, but they're now suddenly withdrawing from their usual activities, or someone at home is now changing habits in their sleep patterns, either they're now sleeping too much or sleeping too little, or people now making decisions that they wouldn't usually make with finances, with their personal relationships, with their personal health as well. Those could be indicators of substance use. And when those pop up, it's always a good idea for people who are close to these people to find people who are best placed to speak to them to have these conversations, because when people, when family members try to speak to other family members about addiction, in our experience, it doesn't usually go too well. Walls are built. The person that needs the help does resist. Sometimes they feel judged and they then shut out. But when someone who's gone through either the right training or someone who's come out of addiction were to start having a conversation with that person, usually a good rapport is built, and then help is found much quicker.
Okay. I think the difficult thing for people is also to identify, these things, on a day-to-day basis. I personally also have some problems with sleeping, continuous sleeping sometimes is a challenge. Yeah. But how well do you know this area? How well do you help? How do you know, this whole area in terms of looking at addictions and helping other people?
So as an organization, we have a unique mix in how we work. We have two sides. We've got people with lived experience, and myself included, and then we have professionals, your psychologists, the social workers, and psychiatrists. So people who've gone through these problems, for example, myself, I'm not afraid or shy to talk about the journey that I went through with alcoholism. I struggled with alcoholism, started off drinking at the age of 15, pursued that habit up until the age of 29. And the last 3 to 4 years of my drinking were really, really bad. So I can easily identify what I went through happening in someone else just by having a short conversation. Then those who are trained, have gone through many years of university, had so many sessions speaking to people. They are very well equipped in identifying these problems and offering evidence-based solutions. So that's how we've been dealing with these issues within the communities, using that approach, the lived experience and the professional side of things.
Mm-hmm. How did you eventually escape this whole, Pope Francis called it a new form of slavery? Yeah. How did you eventually get help yourself?
Well, I got to that realization, and I'm very honest about it. It is purely by the grace of God. But I had that revelation or awakening that if I were to continue down on this path, my life was going to end up in one of 3 guaranteed places, jail, hospital, or death. And I was drinking, doing a lot of drinking, and I was now experimenting with other substances like cannabis, now spending a lot of time with the wrong crowd, making very poor decisions in my life. And, when I look back and saw what was happening, I just knew that it was not going to end well. There was no happy ending for me, and I needed to find help. So I got into a support group where I started meeting other people who are going through the same things. And just by speaking to them, that's when I learned a lot about alcoholism. And, that's why we're now doing this work, having seen how many people out there need help and how we are put in a position to help through our own experiences.
Mm-hmm. And in your line of work, you have done awareness campaigns and even tried to help some of the young people. And who is affected by this? Is it just the young people, or are parents involved? Are priests, religious involved in this?
So the thing with addiction is it doesn't respect all these social demographic factors that we look at: age, sex, economic status, race, whatever. We are all prone to being affected by addiction. So when you ask about how many people are affected, I'll say it's everyone. Because addiction affects the individual, addiction affects the individual's family, addiction affects the whole community. So even at national GDP, this country is actually losing a lot of money due to this pandemic, drug and alcohol abuse, mental health issues. We lose about $163 million annually of national GDP. So we are all paying for the cost of this problem.
So earlier on, you mentioned that one of the problems is to do with stigma, and discrimination for people who are either victims or survivors, of any form of addiction. Yeah. Would you like to share about that?
Yeah, sure. Coming from within the perspective of a church, it is quite easy for the moral model to be applied on people who are struggling with addiction, where we simply say, okay, Alcoholism, drug abuse is a sin, and anyone who's involved in this is a sinner. And those of us who are not involved in it are righteous. That's sort of how, faith, regardless of whether it's Catholicism, other forms of Christianity, or even in the Muslim and other religions. What's generally done is people select the type of sins that they would like to partake in themselves, and then judge everyone else who's doing whatever they're not doing. So drug abuse, alcoholism, always comes with a lot of other immoral activities. That's granted. So there's a lot of stigma and judgment from those, from people who are not involved in that space. But recovery does require a lot of love and tolerance. So it's important that as a church, we take that position to accept people who are going through addiction as our brothers and sisters, to accept that they need a lot of help, they need a lot of patience, they need a lot of support for them to be able to get out of this. And that's the only way people can actually recover in a more sustainable, cost-effective way.
Mm-hmm. Love and tolerance may be difficult, but may be easy to some people. But what are some of the practical steps that the church can take? What are some of the ways the church can use to respond to this crisis, helping people and actually, contributing to the healing and to the treatment of people who are suffering from addiction?
Yeah, I think the church does have a huge role to play. And I would like to commend already some of the efforts that have been done within the Archdiocese of Harare, and I'm sure other dioceses are doing the same. I read the letter, the Lenten appeal that was put out by His Grace Archbishop Arasi Ndlovu for the church to mobilize resources to support awareness campaigns, treatment and rehabilitation. That's a very good start. We have also been invited into the Catholic schools to raise awareness campaigns to the students. And the good thing about our schools is that they are well within the center of the community, so they can serve as hubs for us to serve both the Catholics and anyone else who is located within where our institutions are found. So opening up our institutions for services is a brilliant game changer that we have as a huge opportunity for us as a church to tap into. The church also has a lot of infrastructure, hospitals, schools, etc. And some of those facilities can be converted into rehabilitation centers. And I think that's something we could put out there to start looking at. Can we convert maybe a dormitory at one of the hospitals that we have and make it into a mental health facility focusing on drug and alcohol abuse? That may be something that we could do as a church. And on a preventive side, I think we also need to look at how role modeling plays a huge role in the upbringing of young people. We always have a lot of functions as a church, fundraising events, choir competitions, sports days. And when the young people see elders and adults, and priests included, sometimes drinking publicly, that may be sending a wrong signal to young people, because when they see people they look up to behaving in a certain way, they think that way of life is normal.
They think that is so cool.
Yes, they think it is so cool. And growing up, I come from a parish where we did a lot of fundraising to build the actual chapel, the hall, and a lot of projects. And at those functions, a lot of booze was sold. And you'll see a lot of the people that we looked up to drinking. And we thought, well, drinking is not a bad thing. So maybe as a church, we could revisit that position in terms of how it may have an impact on the future generations.
Mm-hmm. This Pope Francis prayer intention for March is that that we can pray for people who have been harmed by the church. Yeah. Perhaps we did not do it directly, but I guess indirectly. What are some of the programs that can be running and to help different people to respond to this crisis, and who should we be targeting?
I think education is one big way of dealing with these issues. Psychoeducation. Let's carry the message. The message is out there. Once again, just to commend the church, I've seen a lot of Lenten talks that are happening now where the issues of drug and substance abuse is a key topic. So I think that is a huge step towards improving the situation and helping people. Let's put up flyers, let's put up signs at our churches, at our schools, at every other place that we have access to. It will help in carrying the correct message on what this problem is, what the solution is, and how people can access that solution.
Mm-hmm. Jacob, thank you very much for coming. What would be your last words to young people, to parents, to priests, to sisters, and people within the church?
Well, I think in closing, I'd say addiction is more common than we think. A lot of it is being hidden. A lot of people are struggling in silence. But I think if people come out and people are willing to find help, it then helps the next person to believe that, okay, if someone went through this and managed to come out of it, I too can have that opportunity. And as an organization, maybe I can leave out our National Addiction Helpline, which is a platform we've created to specifically help people struggling with drug and alcohol abuse issues. So you can send via WhatsApp, just send a hi to this number, 0771 611 311, 0771 611 311.
Okay. Jacob, thank you very much for your insights. There you have it. Viewers, thank you very much for watching. And remember that we all have a role to play in rehabilitating people who are suffering from addiction, to bring back their joy, to bring back their dignity, but also to prevent people falling into certain addictions. You may be the one suffering from that, and it is also your role to help yourself, to help others who are around you. For now, it's bye.